Hello traveller, and welcome to Cryptid Central. I hope you are well. As you already know, we humans are just one of the species who call this planet home. We share this world with countless other life forms, some similar to ourselves, and others very different indeed. We have only discovered 1.5 million animal species out of an estimated 7 million, so isn't it possible that the Loveland Frogmen could be among them? The Loveland Frogmen are a small group of cryptids named after the town of Loveland, Ohio, USA, where they have been sighted a total of 4 times since the year 1955. The Loveland Frogmen are described as being bipedal and between 3 and 4 feet tall, with green skin, webbed hands and feet, and with a distinctly frog-like appearance, hence the name. The fact that these cryptids are bipedal makes them rather unique, as there are no other known species of frog that walks on 2 legs, leaving some to believe that the Loveland Frogmen aren't really frogs at all. Some cryptozoologists theorize that they are more likely to be alien visitors, rather than a relative of the frog. With their small stature and portly appearance, combined with their greenish skin, large eyes and webbed hands and feet, it could be that these aliens simply resemble the frogs that we have on Earth entirely by coincidence. It could also be that the frogmen are a type of humanoid. There have been many different variations of the homo genus throughout history, some very short like the pygmy peoples of the Congo who average around 4 feet 11 inches in height, to the ancient giants such as the Nephilim and the trolls, who would grow to be between 12 and 15 feet tall. And of course, there are modern humans who vary greatly in height and size, meaning that a race of smaller people who do not wish to make contact with us would remain entirely possible. Yet another theory to be put forward is that the Loveland Frogmen are the result of gene splicing experiments, and are in fact genetic hybrids of humans and reptiles, created for some unknown purpose. Gene editing as a technology was invented in the 1950s, the same decade in which the frogmen made their first appearance. Perhaps they escaped from the secret facility in which they were being held, or maybe they were set free. Perhaps they were a failed attempt at creating the Ubermensch. In the 1950s, it could be that the world's governments and the scientific community were seeking ways to avoid any catastrophic future wars or a repeat of the Second World War, which they had witnessed only a few years before. By attempting to create a superior human who would rise above the values that had been the cause of the Second World War, they would hopefully secure the future's safety for generations to come. But with genetic engineering still in its infancy, and the experiment being a complete failure, it could be that the project was shut down, and the created specimens were ordered destroyed. If they escaped, or were set free by a member of the team who had grown attached to them, then they could be the very same creatures that were witnessed in Loveland, Ohio in the 1950s, the 1970s, and as recently as 2016. The Loveland Frogmen, small, green-skinned cryptids that are said to live near Loveland, Ohio. They have webbed hands and feet, large eyes, and are also said to be able to use tools and have their own unique form of technology. Is it possible that they are of alien origin? Nobody knows exactly what they are, and there have only ever been 4 reported sightings. On a lonely stretch of road that runs along the Miami River in Claremont County, just on the outskirts of the small town of Loveland, Ohio, a businessman was driving along at 3:30 a.m. This was a journey he had made countless times before over the years, and today seemed no different. The sun was beginning to rise, and it seemed as though he would be reaching his destination in good time. This was, however, to be one of the most bizarre and memorable rides to work that he would ever take. Something at the side of the road caught the businessman's attention, so much so that he decided he needed to pull over so that he could observe it properly. He couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. There by the side of the road were what he described as 3 bipedal, quasi-reptilian entities congregating by the side of the road. He stated that the creatures were between 3 and 4 feet tall, covered with leathery skin, and had webbed hands and feet. The most distinguishing feature, however, was their frog-like heads, which he stated had deep wrinkles where their hair should have been. The businessman began to feel uneasy and was scared by what he was seeing, and just as he was about to drive away, one of the frogmen suddenly pulled out and held above its head what the man could only describe as a wand. The wand-like device, he said, then began to spew out bright sparks, at which point the businessman hit the accelerator and made a quick getaway. This strange first encounter with the Loveland Frogmen sounds like an encounter with aliens. Perhaps this wand that the businessman spoke of was in fact a piece of alien technology, or a weapon. The bright sparks that began to shoot out of the device could have been weaponized energy or lasers. If the frogman had suddenly noticed that the businessman was watching them, it could have drawn this wand as a weapon and been preparing to attack, or at least fire a warning shot to frighten him off. This was the first recorded encounter with the Loveland Frogmen, but it would not be the last, and the 2 most significant encounters were yet to come. On the 3rd day of March 1972, almost 17 years after the businessman first reported the frogmen, a police officer, who was chosen to remain anonymous, was driving along Riverside Road heading towards Loveland when he saw something quite unusual. The officer claimed that he was driving slowly as the road was extremely icy when he saw what looked like a dog by the curb. All of a sudden, the animal darted out in front of the cruiser, forcing the officer to slam on the brakes in order to avoid a collision. Once the police cruiser came to a halt, its headlights fell upon the animal. At this point, the officer saw something quite bizarre. The creature, now quite clearly not any kind of dog, quickly stood on 2 legs, stared back at the police officer, and then ran back towards the side of the road, where it scrambled over the guardrail and scurried down the embankment. When the officer ran after it and looked down the embankment, he saw that it was gone, having disappeared into the Ohio River. The officer described the creature as being 3 to 4 feet tall and weighing between 50 and 75 pounds. He also claimed that it had leathery skin and that the animal's features resembled those of a frog or lizard. Another officer investigated the scene later that evening. There were no signs of the creature, but the officer did report that there were distinct scratch marks on the guardrail where the frogman was supposed to have crossed. Two weeks after this strange event, the frogman was seen again. Police officer Mark Matthews, while driving into Loveland, spotted what he believed to be an injured animal lying in the road. Matthews pulled his cruiser over and climbed out with the intention of moving the carcass somewhere to the side of the road where it wouldn't cause an accident. Suddenly, the creature abruptly lurched upwards into a crouched position. Startled by the frogman's reptilian appearance, Matthews unholstered his revolver and fired a shot at the creature, which then jumped up and hobbled over to the side of the road. The frogman then stepped over the guardrail, keeping a watchful eye on the armed officer the whole time. Matthews' frogman matched the first officer's description down to the last detail. 2 police officers, 2 separate incidents within 2 weeks of each other, and both in the same area as the first frogman event that occurred back in 1955. There was definitely something strange going on in Loveland, Ohio. In August 2016, the last reported sighting of a frogman was made. Sam Jacobs and his girlfriend were playing Pokemon Go in Cincinnati, Ohio, when they came across a small figure with glowing eyes. Jacobs reported that the frog-like creature walked on 2 legs, and he took this short video of the event. As you can see, the creature is standing in or near a body of water. Its eyes are glowing, and it seems to be looking around, perhaps sensing the presence of Jacobs. In the years since these events happened, Officer Mark Matthews, the police officer who witnessed the 3rd appearance of the Loveland Frogmen, has backtracked on his story and has denied that these events ever took place. He now claims that the animal in question wasn't a frogman, and was simply a large lizard that must have escaped from its enclosure. He has also said that the only reason he shot at the creature was out of loyalty to the first police officer who witnessed the frogman 2 weeks prior, and to help confirm the officer's story, a story which of course was being met with a great deal of skepticism. This does seem like a rather weak explanation, however. How would shooting a large escaped pet lizard confirm his fellow officer's story of a frogman? Wouldn't that instead disprove his claim and set him up for further ridicule? Officer Mark Matthews, in a 2001 email interview, explained that the incident was habitually blown out of proportion. He stated that it was and is no monster. It was not leathery. It was not 3 to 5 feet tall. It did not stand erect. The animal I saw was obviously some type of lizard that someone had as a pet, that either got too large for its aquarium, escaped by accident, or they simply got tired of it. It was less than 3 feet in length, ran across the road, and was probably blinded by my headlights. It presented no aggressive action. When the incident happened back in 1972, Officer Mark Matthews was adamant that he witnessed a frogman. In his 2001 email interview, he was adamant that it was an escaped household pet. It would seem that something, or someone, forced him to change his mind, or at least change the story that he would tell publicly. Perhaps there is a cover-up in play. If these frogmen are known by the men in charge to exist, it could be that they wish to keep them a secret from the general populace. The FBI, or maybe the Men in Black, could have coerced Officer Matthews into retracting his story and forced him into signing non-disclosure documents to prevent the story from gaining too much traction. If he ever spoke again about the night's events in the way that they really happened, well, that could spell the end of Officer Matthews. The Loveland Frogmen. Are they aliens? Are they humanoids? Are they animals? Or are they a failed genetic experiment that escaped and made a new life for itself in the Ohio wilderness? We have only ever witnessed the frogmen 4 times since their first appearance in the 1950s. There are 2 questions we must now ask. Are they still out there? And will we ever see them again?